Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you can hear me and glad you're able to join me. Ani Bojo, Deborah McGregor, Indigenous Cause. I'm an associate professor here at York University. I'm an Ishtabek from Whitefish River University, and welcome to the first of our speaker series on Indigenous History Month. And so for this month, we'll be focusing on a series of events to raise awareness about Indigenous culture, worldview, opinions, and understanding. Our approach is to engage in conversation with people who work to revitalize Indigenous knowledge, language, history through our community-based work or scholarship. So June is actually National Indigenous History Month, and we have a little page on our website so people are more interested in that. Which I'm interpreting very broadly. So we're trying to offer a range of topics and people who have different knowledge, how they're engaging in history and traditional knowledge and working with elders in their community to learn more about bringing our lives and our knowledge to life to deal with contemporary challenges or even our own interests as we try to revitalize ourselves. So we're essentially just really interested in people to learn anything about Indigenous people. So if that happens, then we're thrilled. And having said that, our first speaker to launch is Joseph Pitawanakwat from Wikwemikong. He's now living in Peterborough with his family. And I'm thrilled that he was able to join us, and I'm also just really happy that you're really super interested in his work as much as I am. So just to highlight, our next event coming up is June 16th with Professor John Johnson from the University of Toronto, and he'll talk about history in Toronto and the First Story app, and so people can get out, even if we're physical distancing, to go learn some things. And then on Thursday from 3:30 to 4:30, Sylvia Plain to talk about the history of canoe. So more about Joseph. Well, he's a master's student in environmental studies. He, along with his family, runs the Creators Garden, which you can find by Googling Creators Garden, and it comes up in Facebook. And so it's a small business that's focused on teaching the legitimacy of plant-based medicine. He has a passion for healing properties of plants. It's part of a family tradition with his grandmother's a midwife who knew her medicine. He teaches people how to sustainably harvest in a respectful way. So there's a lot of ecological knowledge along with plant knowledge. It's not going to be possible to learn everything in a couple hours. I went to one of Joe's workshops and my head exploded. There's just like so much to know. So like check out more on his Facebook page or follow up and work with him later. One of the aspects of his work that I just really greatly admire is just how he's also revitalizing language through the work that he does by using it. Like that's one of the best ways to do it is to use it and to speak it and to help highlight language as a way to understand the work. He does great work with youth and in communities. And once I stop talking, because actually you're interested in listening to Joseph, is he'll begin with his remarks and presentation. There'll be time for Q&A. There'll be an opportunity to input some of the questions or comments through the chat. And then hopefully there'll be opportunity to be able to hear what his reflections on some of the questions that you might have. So we'll do our best to see if we can capture that. So with that, again, thank you for joining us. And here's Joe.
Yeah, all right. Oh man, we even had a little test run before we started going, and then everything just went dark. That was freaky. Of course, this has to happen. All right, cool. Yeah, so yeah, Indigenous History Month. We got lots of cool stuff going on, and yeah, just like Deb says, one of the things is sort of talk about some of my favorite plants, some of my favorite medicines that are really good at explaining or language And I guess I might as well just start. I could start out with an example, but yeah, let me just tell you first, just who I am and how everything got started. Just real quick, my favorite line, just real quick. So I like about 10 years ago, I met my wife, and we spent a lot of time with my grandma. My grandma and her family spent a lot of time with my wife and her family. So when me and my wife got together, there was lots of stories to share, and so we were always spending time with my grandma. But every time that we were there visiting with her, uh, I wanted to show my wife like how amazing my family is, and how amazing my grandma is, how smart she is, and the way that I did that, the stories that I drew out of my grandma was stories like about how she had to use plants for medicine. Because for me this was ridiculous. My wife, I mean my mom, is she's a registered nurse for like 26 years. She graduated when she was pregnant with me, and so I grew up with my mom had those smarts and that knowledge, and then even not just there too. Like my mom, she was always obsessed with continuing her education and always learning more, and not like going to school for one period of time and then maintaining that same level of education. No way, she was always studying, and then she even went back to school for to be a registered massage therapist, because she wanted to have a deeper understanding of different tissues and anatomy and physiology and things like that. She was always obsessed with learning, and so that was my mom. And yeah, when I would go see my grandma, it was like, yeah, she had no hospital when she was being raised, and to a certain degree when she was raising her kids, access to a hospital was pretty limited. And certainly like the stories that I would always ask my grandma about was stories about her profession. Her profession was midwifery. So her mom was a very famous midwife, Bridget, and very famous midwife. And yeah, their role was to deliver babies, to help with the preparation before pregnancy, and then to help, deliver the babies, and then a little bit of post care. The majority of midwifery, like the practice, was dedicated to before pregnancy. It was really cool. So they would always spend time with women and with families to help make sure everything is ready before you try to get pregnant, before you would make a family. And I just gotta, that door keeps slamming. There we go. Too big of a draft. Yeah, so they would dedicate so much time before pregnancy to make sure everything was going to be okay. And but of course they had to be there for the delivery, especially if that delivery happened in the winter, because the road would close down. There's no road, and so they couldn't get to the hospital. And so they had to have the babies at home. And so Bridget and my grandma, Tekla Pheasant, we just call her Mama, they would have to go and help. And one of my favorite stories, one of the first stories that I got my grandma to tell my wife, so that my wife knew how amazing my family is and how much you have to stay here, was my grandma. The way she talks about her mom was always like my mom was real dramatic all the time, like almost like it makes her feel embarrassed sometimes. And so she gives examples like one morning her mom Bridget comes in the bedroom, wakes her up real like 4 o'clock in the morning, just shaking her. And then my mama is sleeping, she's a little 5-year-old girl, and she gets woken up. Hey, what's happening? And then Bridget says, get up, get everything you need for 2 months, we're leaving. And then my mama was lying there, and she thought, ever dramatic. I don't even have anything. Like she only has one set of clothes. And so she just said to her mom, well, guess I'm ready then. And so they went, they walked, that particular house that they walked to was about 25 kilometers away from the house that they were living in. So there was an emergency here. And so they left and started walking like 4 o'clock in the morning with a 5-year-old, with no roads, no hospitals, no police, no nothing. And just the idea of the way my grandma was raised, it was so fascinating. So they're walking on little footpaths to get to this house. And for that particular time, they did not use like wagon roads because they went different longer ways, and they were just walking on footpaths. So then anyway, they get to the house, and then my grandma just rips her clothes, her shirt. She had a flannel shirt on over shirt, like not almost like a jacket, I guess, but just ripped it, and then ripped this long square. And then she said, "Where's your matches?" to like the homeowners. "Where's your matches?" And then they said, "Oh," just gave her matches. Like you guys know those Red Bird matches, those match boxes. And then her mom grabbed that matchbox. She took the sleeve off, and then she just flung all the matches on the floor. And then my mama was standing there, little girl, and she's like, "Oh, how come we have to be so dramatic?" But she didn't say nothing though. But yeah, her mom just threw all those matches away, and then put her flannel shirt inside. And the emergency was a premature baby, so that's where they had to lie that baby. It was right inside that matchbox. And right away they got mineral oil, put oil on the baby. And the reason why she said you need everything for 2 months is because they incubated that baby in front of the potbelly wood stove for 2 months. So my grandma, 5 years old, walks 25 kilometers away. Like I just recently tried to set a goal. Like if I walk 25 kilometers a day, that'll be almost like 500,000 steps in a month if I do 25 kilometers a day walking. And I tried to do it, and I got to like day 4, and then I was like taking ice baths, and I couldn't handle it. I was too sore. But this was just life to them. That's a big idea that I really want to be able to portray today. Is we will call it traditional, or we will call it like make it seem like this old school knowledge, but I mean, I don't know. It was just life for everybody then. Certainly was for my grandma. And so they just walked 25 kilometers, got to the house, and started their job, incubating a preemie for 2 months in front of the stove, rubbing oil. And then what had happened was there's not enough demand for for breast milk for a premature baby, and so the mother will dry up. Regardless of their intervention, they tried this intervention here. Let me grab it for you. I got jars all over, but here we have you can't really tell from the picture, but this is what do you call it now? People call it false wintergreen, polygala, fringed polygala. This flower, that's what they use to help with more breast milk, and with that tea. And so that wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to keep the milk going for the baby. And plus her mom said that this is not enough at all. So what they had to do then was make bone broth using fish. And they used tikmek, they used whitefish to make fish bone broth to be able to be feeding the baby. And she had everything she needed to be able to grow. She was a she. And then, it was really amazing because my grandma always like cadences that story with, oh yeah, she says, "You would never tell now. That woman is big." And my grandma, she was always like real cute, little real white poofy hair, real small. And then she would stand beside that woman and she would say, "I remember when you were this big, I held you for 2 months inside little boxes in front of the stove." And so yeah, those are the kind of stories that they have. That was just life back then, but that was their role, was being midwives in our community. And so they got some incredible stories. But that was always my favorite, like how the heck can you raise a family without a hospital? You know how many times I've been to the hospital? What do we do if we didn't have no hospital? Well, of course, for them, they had to rely, when it comes to sickness and injury, they have to rely on the plant medicine, to be able to fix what's wrong. Most of it is used like prophylactically. It's used to help prevent any sort of sickness. And, that's a really fascinating idea too. Like in my community, you talk to all of the old people in most of our Indigenous communities in Ontario. And when they were kids, what the communities that they remember. So like my grandma, when she was the community that existed back then, was a community that did not have chronic disease, did not have metabolic diseases like obesity and diabetes, did not have these stories of cancer and cardiovascular disease. And frailty as we age was something that did not exist. When you got old in communities in that day, you were still jacked. Like no one would mess with you, even if you're 90, even if you're over 100 years old, you still had it in you. You could whip that cane around, no problem. And so no one wanted to test when even into late in your life. And even she'll say like, everybody always had teeth too. Everybody always had a full set of teeth. And so obviously we're not living that life right now. When we look at frailty, we look at chronic disease in Indigenous communities, or even in Canada as a whole. And so one of my biggest pushes to be able to understand, that we need medicine, that maybe medicine has an important role in our ability to live this good life, then this is something that I should learn. And that's exactly what we did. We started to realize, like me and my wife she'd tell us this crazy story about a plant, my grandma. And we were like, whoa, that's pretty freaky. And we'd be like, oh, how does that plant look? And then me and my wife would go on an adventure trying to find it. And we would find it. And it was funny though, the first couple times, because we're on Manitoulin, is one of the most biologically diverse, as far as plant community goes, areas in the Great Lakes. And on Manitoulin, we'll have every plant that grows in the Great Lake region is all scrunched onto Manitoulin Island. And so you'll get everything from prickly pear cactus from the south, and you'll get bearberry and like Arctostaphylos uva-ursi and crowberries and things like this. These Arctic plants growing in this massive region. Everything is all just scrunched onto this one little island. And then even on top of that, we'll have 17 wildflowers that grow there that don't grow anywhere else in the entire world. And then and one of those flowers blooms once every 10 years. And then here's me and my wife. On Manitoulin, you just walk, you could be on a beach, you pass some sand dunes, and then you'll be in a maple forest, and then you'll go through a sphagnum bog, and then you'll be through a meadow and in an old recovering Misco, like a prairie. And it's like you pass all this on a 15-minute walk. Whereas here I'm in Peterborough, I'm in the same ecosystem for like a half hour. And then I'm in the Cambrian Shield for like 6 hours of driving. And so it's the same like ecosystem, right? But on Manitoulin, it's so diverse everywhere. And so me and my wife, it's like the perfect storm for to have this interest in plants, but then to have a grandma like mine, and then to have a mom like mine, and then to have a wife to go and begin our relationship looking at, it's like a big adult scavenger hunt trying to find all of these plants my grandma talks about. So that's how we sort of learned. We'd bring plants back to my grandma and she'd be like, no. Or she'd be like, yes. That's what I remember. We picked that. And she would hold it and smell it and make tea and just know everything about it. And I really like that. And so once we were learning about medicine, and then what we started to realize is we were developing a repertoire. And I was like, hey man, we should test this out. I know lots of people who have gout or who have kidney problems. I know lots of people who have, osteoporosis or are getting arthritis. And arthritis, the number one disease that affects First Nations people by a landslide. I know so many people with arthritis. Let's make medicine for that and give it to them and see if it works. So, like, I guess unethical by university standard, but that's how we started. It was just giving medicine to people based on, like, because what my grandma says, just testing it out on everybody, just being like, here, you have arthritis. My grandma taught me this, test this out. And they put it on, and they would have what they needed to have less pain or no pain, and then to even have their joints going back to normal. And so we were like, wow, we were freaking out because of what we were seeing. And so, like, for the arthritis was very simple. I mean, I would always have my mom's voice in my head too, like about all of the science and about all of the technology and the whole pharmaceutical industry and the way medicine works and how complex this is. She would always question me and challenge me, especially like in our early stages. And so I would have to learn that too. And so I did. And some of the things that we were able to find out were absolutely incredible. Like for Willow is the principal ingredient in the medicine for arthritis. Oh, I got to do it like Facebook style. See that? Willow is Isogopamish, is both Salix candida and Salix baebiana are probably the most extensively used species. And I wanted to figure out, like, how come this is working? How come people's joints are going back to normal? It seems like, how come everyone doesn't notice if this works so well? And so I did just a little bit of research, and at the time was a big shift from into public source medical scientific exploration was starting to become made public. And so I could scour literature to be able to figure out if anybody has ever studied Willow. And real simply, like, I don't know if I can explain it real simply, but like the driving force of rheumatoid arthritis is influx of overexpressed innate immune response in your connective tissue. And so you'll have too many neutrophils spraying acid, sort of eating away at your joint. And so your bones will have growth hormone there to replace that. And the growth hormone does not turn off, usually because of too much insulin, disrupting communication in our body. And so the growth hormone just continues in that tissue, regardless if that tissue is fixed. Like if the acid from the neutrophilic cells is eating away at your joint was replaced it, but then it just keeps going. It stays there. And that's what creates the deformity, the abnormal bone that is going to eventually fuse the joint. And the confusion spreads in your immune system via various inflammatory nuclear factors that cause the spread of the condition into other fingers until they're stuck, and then your wrists until they're stuck, your elbows will be stuck, your shoulders will be stuck, and then into your spine, and you'll be totally stuck. And then and so what Willow does, the phenylytic compounds inside of Willow are able to just withdraw that influx of neutrophilic cells. So the driving force of the disease is removed, but also the mediation of growth hormones in your connective tissue allow for the extra tissue to be hormonally rejected. And when it's hormonally rejected, your body will attack it and reabsorb it. And so as your body is reabsorbing that abnormal tissue, your joint is going back to normal. And so that's why we're able to make medicine the way my grandma says for people who, and then we're able to see things go right back to normal. And so this is why, my grandma can remember a community where there was no chronic disease. You didn't die with arthritis. You didn't die with no teeth. You didn't die frail. You died jacked and scary. And so obviously medicine has a role in this. And so I take what my grandma would teach me, and then I would ridicule everything that she says with all of this publicly sourced literature, and be able to find out most of the time, every single time so far, that she was like bang on, right on the money, that this medicine does exactly what she says. And it's been through multiple universities all around the world. And so we understand this. And my grandma understands this via practice, or it's just life, like just a fact of life. And so that was a real fascinating idea. And I sort of took that and just ran with it. And in my community, I was giving medicine away, and basically just to see if it worked. But every time I gave medicine away, like under the direction of my grandma, it always worked. And like real dramatic too. And so we were like, what the heck? This is ridiculous. How come everyone does not know about this? This is insane. Obviously, there was lots of measures that were put in place so that we did not know about it anymore. But anyway, that's how I learned, was just sort of experimenting on everybody. And then so my community started to realize that we were developing a repertoire of all this medicine. And so our community wanted me to teach. So then I was like, oh, okay. Well, I could teach whatever I know. And so I teach in my community, teach everybody what I knew about medicine, the whole host of the various workshops. And then that was able to get us off of, we were on assistance, social assistance that whole time. And then those teaching engagements gave us the ability to come off of that assistance and be self-sufficient. And then other communities started to see what we were doing in Wiikwamkong and invite us to their community. Come do that over here. And so we were like, oh, okay. And then we were like sweeping whole regions, going way up into the north, into the States. And then all of a sudden we were like all over teaching about medicine, and having some really, and so like every community that we would go to and teach about and practice, like the way that I would teach people is offer experiences. So if we want to have a diabetes session, let's make diabetes medicine, and you will see what it does. You will have that experience. And so, yeah, it was super fun doing that, because we got to have our experiences and Wiikwamkong, create that anecdote in Wiikwamkong, but also in every other community, like over 100 different communities that we have a constant relationship with in Ontario alone. And so, yeah, we never took time off for like 6 years. And we were just like, what we were doing is just generating this ridiculous amount of anecdote, this crazy stories of all of these really incredible experiences that people were having when they would engage with medicine just in our workshop. And then if they continued after I left, what the effect that it would have on their life and then on their family. And then that contribution that family was able to generate to the community, it was like this big snowball effect. And we were totally obsessed with that. And that's pretty much where we're at now. That's pretty much what we still do, pre-COVID. Now I'm trying to do my best online, and which brings me here to share what I wanted to share today. See, half-hour intro. That's pretty solid. I'll share with you guys some of the medicine I was talking about, and so if I can just go, let's hope all this stuff works. Man, this stuff gets pretty crazy. these computers. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, we'll find a way to slap it in. But if I could, I'll show you some. I'll show you some pictures. What I want to do today. Sorry, what I want to do today is I even made notes, which Debbie should be very proud of me. This is maybe the second time I've made notes for a presentation. I'm just always on the fly, shooting from the hip. So something about today has me doing things in a different way. But yeah, okay. So what I wanted to do today is I wanted to explore some plants that I think have had a really significant impact on history, but all at the same time, what I'm doing right now, because of everything that is happening, I'm sort of, COVID, I'm scrambling because I'm not allowed to be in communities doing my thing. So I have no income at all. And so I'm trying to find a way to, I don't know, make it. And so I started on Monday, I think it was Monday, creating a resource, a language resource for medicine. One of the first things that you should do, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, I'm just a kid, remember that. But one of the things that I always tell everybody is the first step. When you want to know about medicine, the first step is to just learn their name. It's like the same thing with like when you meet anybody for the first time. Like if you meet Wika for the first time, I wonder if I could do it Facebook style, like a beauty. Yeah, if you meet Wika for the first time, the first thing that you should do is wonder what its name is and why it's named that. Like when you meet anybody else, any other person, like on the subway or at a conference or in your class or anywhere in the grocery store, the first thing that you want to do is know what their name is. You're not going to bust in small talk, just like ask them where they went to school or ask them what shoe they put on first or what arm they put through their jacket first, or what kind of shampoo they use. You're not going to ask a bunch of weird questions, a bunch of details about their life first. You're just going to want to know what their name is. And so like Wiccan, you're going to want to learn Wiccan. Okay, so Wiccan, what does that mean? And then you're going to want to learn its common name. Oh, sweet flag. Why is it called sweet flag? And then its Latin name, Acorus calamus, or Acorus calamus, a variation Americanus. Why is it named that? What's happening there? And to learn what its name is to learn all of those names and why. And it's going to give you a real nice picture as to what that plant is, and which a really solid foundation. And so what that gives you the ability to do, you take Nishnaba taxonomy of plants and you take scientific taxonomy of plants, you're going to be able to understand relationships. You're going to be able to understand real intricate interactions that this plant has with other beings, other creatures around. And then if you learn the scientific taxonomy of plants, you're ensuring positive or proper identification. And so this is like what you could plug into Google to make sure you're getting that exact species. And so I'm getting tired of people mixing these up and talking about the wrong plant. And so, in all of our research and in all of our communities, I just wanted to just set everybody straight, because I was given this amazing opportunity via my grandma and our exposure to over 100 different communities and thousands of different elders and knowledge holders across all different parts of Ontario. I got what we've been able to develop is a really unique gift to be able to understand what plants' names are and what they mean. And so that's what I want to share today. And so like Wiccan is a really good one. Acorus calamus americanus. It's also got my pharmacy back there. But yeah, it's also got leaves, some pretty solid leaves. I don't know, you can't really see from there. You can sort of see. Anyway, Wiccan, what that word means, Wiccan, is indicating to you an action that it has. And so something like how do you say, like something wishkabong is something that's sweet. And so every time you hear that word we, or that sound we, or this is something that's sweet. And the wintergreen, everybody knows wintergreen, Gaultheria procumens or whatever, wild wintergreen. It has that really strong, really sweet methyl salicylate, really sweet wintergreen smell. And so it's very sweet. So we just call it wiensabak, because it smells sweet and it tastes sweet. The berries taste sweet. Anyway, weekend, people, it's called this because weekend is very sweet. No, it's not. It tastes awful. If any of you guys ever eat this root, it's brutal. It's so bitter. It's such a strong taste, strong flavor. Most people don't like it, especially the first time. It's pretty good. Like if you're sick, I'll try to show you there. Yeah, people call it rat root because it looks like a muskrat tail. But yeah, what do you have to understand about that name? What it means is it's describing the action that it has to the water that it's growing in. It changes that water to make it become sweet. And so by our tkebe, by our springs or our wells where we would get water, the source, our water source, we would plant wika around it, and it would make that water taste better. So there's this really amazing way that this plant has impacted history. Really amazing way. I love it so much. Is livestock. When livestock first was trying to be established in North America, in the Great Lakes, it was very unsuccessful because the livestock just wouldn't drink the water. They were like, they just would go on, not a hunger strike, but like, I don't know, thirst strike. But they wouldn't drink the water, and so they would die. And everybody was like, well, what the heck, man, how do we fix this? And so they came to us. They came to Nishaba and was like, hey, can you help with this? And we said, yeah, sure. You just by their water source, plant some wika. It'll make that water taste good for them, taste sweet. And so they did. And then, and a lot of people, a lot of historians will look at that situation and what happened there and attribute that as being one of the most important reasons why livestock was successful here. That's like pigs, chickens, beef, and like everything. And so this plant had a really amazing way that it affected history, and the reflection of that, you can understand that when you learn what its name is. So learn why it's called wika. Don't just say, oh, wika, because it smells kind of good sometimes. But like dig right in, try to figure out exactly why and exactly what's going on. Just with the name, you're going to be able to uncover so much. And so that's what I wanted to be able to share today. Just some really cool ways that I know that plants have impacted history, that is reflective in the names that they have. So what I'll do now is I'll get to your questions in a second. I wanna give her now. So what I'll do is I will go here, and I will go. Right. Oh, I see what happened there. Okay, I gotta wait. Everything's slowing down. Okay, if I go here like that, no, not gonna happen. Okay.
I think that some of that, well, while you're trying to figure that out, Joseph, I think also, as I look at some of the questions, I think some of them are actually kind of on your Facebook page, like Chuck the Tipa, and I think you have some details on there.
Yeah. Okay.
You got it?
I think I got it. If I go here, yeah. And then if I go here, I'm still here. But what I'll do is I'll share my screen. So I just click share screen, share my whole screen. You know, one of the things I could do too that I would really like, because since I took some notes, I could send those off to you guys, so you'll have so you can have some notes that go with the presentation, if that helps in any way. But if I go here, I could show you. I went and opened some computer thing. Okay, give me a second. Get out of here. Go on. So right here, let's go to one of my favorites. This one here. So this is Misco. This is one of my grandma's favorites. You know, that's very reflective as to their practice, and has a really amazing place in history, but also in practice today. So Misco is Eutrochium purpureum, which is sometimes people call it Queen of the Meadow. A lot of people call it Joe Pyeweed. Harvesters, a lot of harvesters will call it thousand roots. And so if you get it from like a bulk herb store, it might be referred to as thousand roots, that's because the roots are just ridiculous. They're locked in the ground. It likes to grow like where it's really clay type of really hard clay soil, and with 1,000 roots inside of 1,000 tiny little roots inside of clay makes it really hard to like actually deal with this plant, to actually pick it. But anyway, Misco, our word for it is to describe what it does. It's medicinal action. And so we use these roots. Actually, when my wife was pregnant, we told my grandma that my wife was pregnant. Right away, she asks like birth plan, and which ours was a home birth with midwives. And my grandma was a little like upset, and we were like, what the heck, man, this is your jam, why are you getting mad at us? And so she said, you should just have it in the hospital, why are you gonna be all dangerous? And you know, because we had to do that like survival. Now everything's okay, which is a pretty amazing perspective for her to give us. But she said, you know, if you're going to go through with this, and if you're going to have your baby at home, you do this, she says. One thing you need to do, and that's you get Misco, and you have this tea ready. You have it made when she starts, 5 minutes, when she starts labor. And so not Braxton Hicks style, 5 minutes, labor. Then you make this. And she said, you don't have to have it, but it's there ready. And so we're like, okay, holy. She was like standing up too. She stood up, came right in my face, and it was real weird, real freaky. But she said that this is what we need, these roots. And so I did. When my wife was in labor, we made it. And the reason why we had to have it is indicated by just the name. Misque is blood, and Misco is something that stops blood from being where it shouldn't. And so this is used to stop a hemorrhage. And so for hemorrhaging, this is what you have to have. And my grandma, when she was with her mom, and her mom was, you know, the practicing midwife, one of the practicing midwives in our community, she said that her mom would have this, prophylactically, like they would have it regardless of a hemorrhage or not. And so there's a lot of really amazing stories that are from at Manitoulin Health Center, the hospital on Manitoulin and Little Current, that the doctors there have of really bad hemorrhages, you know, like 30 years ago, 25 years ago, some really bad hemorrhages. I don't think there's very many things like this that happen now, hopefully soon. But anyway, quite a few years ago, of people who would be hemorrhaging and during like labor, and then dad would just take off. Dad would just bust out of the room, and he'd come back in with a thermos of tea or a jar of tea. And like one really crazy story was or all of the craziest stories, I guess there's so many that are like this, where the hemorrhage is so bad that they're not going to make it to the regional hospital, the Sudbury hospital, to be able to be saved, I guess. And so they're already, considered palliative in that moment. But Buddy busts in with a bunch of tea and is pouring it in his wife, like in her unconscious mouth, where she's supposed to be taking, like, the hemorrhage is so bad that she's literally on her last couple breaths, and that medicine just pools inside of her mouth, and sublingually enough of this medicine is absorbed to stop the hemorrhage, and so then she swallows her tea, and then 15 minutes later she's conscious and she's drinking her tea, and then in the morning they're gone home. They're discharged and they're going home with their baby. That's how amazing that this medicine is, and how important it was in our ability to live the life that this Nishnabek is able to provide us. A life without chronic disease, a life where there are options when it comes to injury, like a hemorrhage, and so this is what I've been obsessed with, understanding and teaching as well. Which is why I find myself here. But yeah, it's a really beautiful plant. See, the reason why I have a picture of a bee here, man, I'm not going to get through what I wanted to get through. It's already 3:30. But watch this. So the reason why I showed this picture, and I really want you to stare at it, I really want you to understand it and remember it, because this one is very important. Bees, when this flower blooms, see, when flowers are blooming, bees will always have food from the beginning of spring. There's flowers that come up when there's still snow on the ground, and then later in the year is when later into the summer, you'll get every from spring all the way until like midsummer, you'll have a whole bunch of flowers, tons of food all the time, but like lilacs will die off, all these other plants will die off, and then there's this scarce period where there's very little food for bees, and so they sort of panic, and at that period, and then there's fall flowers that sort of start out like a couple weeks later. Then there's like all of the asters and all these really intense fall flowers. But that period where there's very little flowers in bloom is when Eutrochium purpureum, when Mescogomesek, Joe Pyeweed is gonna blossom. And when it blossoms, in that particular time, it's such an important plant for bees, so important that they will move their nest to where there is a sufficient amount of this flower. And so we've offered it. We've gotten so many people, in regards to climate change, I guess, and some of the things that we're dealing with around bees and bee population is we've had farmers coming up to us like, hey, we've had 3 sets of tomato flowers and not one tomato yet, because there's no pollinators. They're not being pollinated. Do you know any way that can help? And so this is what I say: plant a whole bunch of Joe Pyeweed. If you do that, then the bees will understand and they will move their colony to be near that very important food source. During the famine, this is the big feast that explodes out of the ground. So that's where they will put their nest. And so we've got a lot of people who just go out in the year, because you see this flower. This flower is going to make, you see how many little flowerets there are on top. It's going to make thousands of seeds per plant. And so it's very easy to get like millions of seeds to be able to bring and plant like in your ditch, or like in little areas by your garden, and bring the pollinators, so you have successful pollination and more yield. And so there's so many ways that plants are impactful for medicine, for their utility use in climate change and these sorts of ideas. I really like that. But if I could grab another one, where should I go? Oh, this one's cool. I like this one. I talked about this one the other day. I have my Facebook page Creator's Garden. I stream. Well, I stream on there every Saturday, but I stream on Twitch every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. So you could find me on there. And I just did this session because this is where I've been obsessed with making this resource, getting that first step out there. If you want to learn about plants, if you want to get that plant knowledge, the first thing that you should do is learn the plant's name. And then with that name, you're gonna be way ahead of the game. So yeah, I've just been obsessed with this lately, and this is one of the things I shared in the stream I did on Monday, I think, or Wednesday maybe. Wednesday. But yeah, this one's funny. Sometimes the name we have for the plant, we'll talk about the way that it looks. Like this one. This one is Sagittaria latiflora. This is arrowhead, obviously. This is the reason why we call it arrowhead. But in the Schnabbe, sometimes people will call it, some people will call it Jajaka dance, like as if it looks like the legs on a Jajak, a sandhill crane. When a sandhill crane is walking, that's what they look like. So people will call it the Jajaka dance. It looks like a sandhill crane walking through the field. Or sometimes even a Jajaka, like their foot, the way their footprint looks, which is kind of hilarious. But what I wanted to tell you about is the name of the kind of like sometimes plants will have a name that is good for kids, like to help kids remember, like a Jajaka dance, the crow. I mean Jajak, crane's foot, legs, and or their foot. This is a good way for kids to remember what that looks like. But the real name for it is Wispin, Wabsipin, Wispin, like sweet potato. But no, Wabsipin. And Wapsi, like to talk about the white roots, right? Wapske is something that's white. And so Wabsi pin is a white potato. Pin is a potato. But when you get to more Algonquin communities, they do not say pin, they'll say podo. And so this would be Wabsi podon for Algonquin communities. And that's where it gets interesting, because Wabsi padon is white potato, and potato that's Nishnawbe language, that's Algonquin language. And so I like to use this as an example that you've been talking Jubba your whole life, or you've been talking Nishnawbe your whole life, and you didn't even know. Every time you say potato, you're speaking my language, podon or pin. And then in French, they say, because potatoes are indigenous species or indigenous family of plants to North America or to South America, that have been naturalized and cultivated in North America for I don't know how many thousands of years. And so because potatoes are from here, the word potato is from here too, podon. Or in some Algonquin dialects, podak. And then what happens is French people come here and they're saying, what is this plant? And so podo. And so they say, oh, okay. And they say patat. Maybe I should say a little bit more French, patat. And so you have the patat. Then now they say pomme de terre, I think, like a dirty apple, or I mean like a apple from the earth. I do not know French, but Wabzipen, this is the yellow potato, and it's not like the potato. Obviously, it's Sagittaria latiflora. It's an aquatic species, but so it's not like the potatoes that you would cultivate from a garden, but they are wild sort of potato substitutes, starchy substitutes. And so all it takes is for you to just take like a bow rake and smash it in underneath the leaves of this plant and just sort of wiggle the rake. And then all these wabsipanik are going to float to the surface. And so all this food will just start popping up. and then you just, harvest away. So there's a lot of really neat ways that plants have impacted our history, even the way that we talk still today. It's kind of fun, kind of a fun idea. What's another cool one I could show you? Here's a real solid. Oh wait, here, no, I'll show you this one. This one's one of my favorites here. Because there's this really neat idea. One of my favorite ideas. Here's black snake root, Sanacula canadensis, and we will call it Zegna Boy. Zegna Boy is talking about when something gets stuck. So like wait, let me think here. Mosquito. A mosquito is Zegna because they get stuck to you. And so something like that is sticky, like juice or something, buzogwakame is something that's sticky, buzogwakame. And so Zegna is a mosquito because they get stuck on you. They're sticky. And then we'll even say, like, to describe our partner or our spouse, we'll say buzzagim, they're stuck to us. And then for burrs, this is a word that we use to describe burrs, zegedebwe, because they get stuck. So you hear zegeme, buzzagim, buzogwakame, zegedebwe, because they get stuck to you. Anyway, this is the OG of zegedebwe. This is the original burr. And see all those little hooks? All those little hooks, that's how it's done. And what happens is burdock comes over here. This is another picture of the black snake root. And poor little guy. So you guys probably all had these little burrs on you before, eh? But this little guy, see, he's even missing a leaf, how sad he is. Because what happens is burdock comes over here. Burdock, big old burdock, big European plant, comes and plops himself here and makes really massive burrs that really get stuck to you. And they even get stuck to each other, make a big ball. Then you could throw them at people, and then you get a big. We used to do that in the playground. Real brutal. Throwing big burr balls at each other. But then, yeah, it's a magnificent burr, much more. It's not an inconspicuous little green burr that sort of, it'll get stuck to your clothes, but, never past your knees. You'll get sometimes, if you're very short, I guess some of them will be on your thigh, but it's small. Burdock, it'll be stuck in your hair. And so what ended up happening is that it just completely stole the name from Zegedebwe, from this guy, from black snake root, Senecula canadensis. It stole its name and said, I'm Zegedebwe now. So now everybody will call big burdock invasive species from Europe, that's Zegedebwe. And then we'll go to this plant and we'll say, well, what's this? That's Zegedebwe. But then it's like, yeah, this is the OG. He's got to take back the name. Given some on that sort of note, let me go right here. Something that we're probably all fairly familiar with. This is ever cute little pictures. Oh well, you can still see. So it's leeks. Leeks is real nice macros of the flowers. I just scanned these all off of Google, all these images, but I made sure to click on images that were free or for reuse. But yeah, leeks are real fun. We call them bugujajagangwash. That's what everybody calls them. And that gets me upset because buguje means wild. It means like it's wild, and and so this is buguje jagangwash. And then when we go into the grocery store, you're like in No Frills, or you're like at Andy's, our grocery store, or you're in like the northern, everybody else's grocery store, and you go and get onions in a grocery store, and you'll say, I'm getting jagangwash. And that bothers me because this is the OG Jigongwish. This is the original Jigongwish. My grandma just calls this Jigongwish. And something that you would get from No Frills, something you would get from Sobeys, that's Bugujir Jigongwish. That's the wild one that's not supposed to be here. That's the alien. And so I always tell everybody, maybe it's worth it if we just flip the script a little bit and just say, hey, this is not Bugujir Jigongwish. This is the one that was always here. And start calling it by what it used to be named is just Jigongwish. Then we could call the one in the grocery store Bugujir Jigongwish. You know what you could do with these though? See that picture of the what do you call them? These seeds, all these little seeds. Leeks seed themselves very well, and so what a guy one fella did in Wiki, he wanted to make a quick buck, and one of the quickest ways to make money was was when a sheep eats leeks, they eat all of those leaves that pop up in the spring. They eat all those leaves, and then their milk will taste like leeks, which people like. But really, chefs will buy this because they use it in special types of cooking to make cheese and to make different flavors of cheeses and sour cream and stuff like that. And so that's very, very, very expensive because leeks are, not they're common, but not where there are sheep farmers, I guess. And so real quick way for him to make a good buck, he got his kids every year for 5 years to be taking those seeds and kicking them down and planting them. And that was able to generate enough in the small, I forget like how big, it must have been just like maybe 3 or 4 acres or something small, a forest that he got leeks to germinate and grow. And I think it was like 5th or 6th year, he sent his sheeps in there, or his sheep. Sound real. Anyway, he sent his sheep in there, and they ate all the leaves, made that special milk. And then he got a truck. He bought a new tractor, and he got a great big truck. And he made so much money off of that milk from doing that. It was a little bit of a 6-year adventure, but he would just give his kids candies, and they would go into the forest and knock all these seeds down and plant them all. It ended up being really, really successful. It's real cool. But this is Jigongwish, and what we have in Sobeys, that's Bugujir. That's wild. Where can I go now? Maybe I could ease you guys into this idea real quick. Oh, okay, it's 3:30. Wait, no, 4:30. We got till 4:30. Okay, just give me a ring when you want me to shut up. I'll show you this one though real quick. I love this one. This is this is confusing because it's got tons of different names. Canada Mayflower, it will be called Canada Mayflower, but then it will be called False Lily of the Valley as well. And it makes real sweet little berries. But it's Miamanthemum canadensis. And I could see how much there is there. It's a really beautiful. We use it sometimes for medicine, but not a very significant species as far as a specific medicinal action. Sort of just a general, just like more of like a nutraceutical sort of. Nothing very significant. Anyway, what we will call it, we'll call it Washkeshim in the Gaushk. Washkeshim in the Gaushk. Washkeshim is a deer, white-tailed deer, and Washkeshim min is the berry. Washkeshim in the Gaushk is describing the plant in its entirety. And so this is Oshke Shimin Roshk. And of course, it's talking about a relationship that deer have with this plant. And aside from actually, you know what? It was a woman. I'm very embarrassed now to not remember what her name is. Oh, poopy pants. She's a York faculty, except I think she just like hit up a sabbatical, or she's just donezo. Oh man, real solid woman though, real smart. She spent most of her years aging plants, aging roots, measuring how old they are. Dang. Anyway, this this is deer's favorite summer food. This and trilliums. Trilliums, they're just absolutely obsessed with. And then also the Miamanthemum canadensis, the Canada Mayflower, false lily of the valley, false because it's not the European one. The European one, of course, is the true. But anyway, deer's favorite food. And you could actually use this as a measuring tool to be able to understand how much deer are in the forest. Basically, the more of this plant in the forest, the less deer there are. Because of course this is the deer's favorite food, and so they gobble. This is just like a treasure trove. This is just a buffet table for a deer, and they would just gobble it all up, and then even defend this area. So if it's very thin though, and you only see a couple, then this usually indicates that there are not too many deer, or there are. Sorry. Yeah, if there's a very little bit, that usually indicates that there are lots of deer. If there's lots of the plant, this indicates that there is very little white-tailed deer. Because if there was lots, they would eat it all. Yeah, I almost messed it up there. Or I did mess it up, but I recovered, hopefully. So other creatures really like it too, but nothing like deer. In that really aggressive, that sort of, deer are always known to be like a very gentle creature, run away from everything, but they will put up their defense when it comes to this plant. They'll be like, hey man, this mine, get out of here. And sort of put aside that gentleness. So a lot of the times with plants and different plants, we will acknowledge a special relationship that plant has with another being or another creature. And of course, in this case, Washke Shimin is the plant that deer absolutely love. So that one's kind of fun. I really like that. So yeah, there's all kinds of real cool ways that plants have to understand. I wonder if I could show you this one. This one's cool because this one gives you sort of another angle as to understanding plants and understanding how important it is to learn their name and what you can learn from it. This is Monarda fistulosa. It's bee balm, wild bergamot. Very, very, very beautiful flower. I really like it, and it smells fantastic. A lot of people say it smells like Fruit Loops. I had a buddy bust in our stream there telling everybody that it smelled like Fruit Loops. But yeah, for reals, it smells like Fruit Loops. We will call it Misco's. Now I'm forgetting. Oh, I have notes. I have too many names in my head. Let me be unprofessional here. I wonder if I even put it on here. Oh yeah, I'm Mshko. Jeez. Mshko. And what that word is describing two things. Where the plant is growing and a relationship that this plant has with somebody else. So Mishkosneing is like, well, Mishkons is like grass, and Mishkosneing is where there's a whole bunch of grass, like a meadow. And so of course this is like the dominant wildflower in that type of environment. It'll just completely inoculate a meadow with itself. It's a mint, and so I mean, if any of you ever plant mint in a garden, if there's one thing that you should know about mint is how incredibly aggressive it is. And so this one will really easily take control and be one of the most dominant wildflower species in a meadow, in any given meadow. So Misco is a meadow, and so Misco is the name of this plant. But that suffix Shkoawis, the end of that word is sort of indicating something else really special, and that's a relationship that it has with another creature that we'll call Moshko or Moshko, who is elk. And elk's dominant nature in that, or the environment that elk prefers to be dominant in, is a meadow, in like a grasslandy meadow. That's where you will always see them. And so this is what we named the creature after, is that place where it likes to be, in Shkosneing, in a meadow, king of the meadow, I guess. But one thing that I found out really interesting is, this is one of the most important medicines that we will use in a smoke medicine that we use. Hunters will make a mixture of like 34, anywhere from like 15, I guess, to 34 different species of plants all mixed together, that when you use this medicine to it hides your smell. But what that medicine really does is it takes advantage of another creature's relationship to that particular food source. This, of course, bee balm being an amazing food source for elk, and there being one of their favorite foods. And so you could take advantage of that by harvesting a bunch of this and wait until all the bee balm, all the shkoawis is all gone. And then when you burn that and you cover yourself with that scent, then it overrides a certain behavior, a certain understanding inside of that elk. And then he won't even care where you're from, or he won't care what you smell like. He will just smell that food, and he'll keep walking towards you. And then you'll see his ears will go back, and he'll be like, "Oh, man, this guy, he smells like he's from Brampton. I'm not gonna go over there." But then he'll smell shkoawis, and he'll be like, "Oh, but that's my favorite food." His ears will go forward. He'll take steps towards you. Then he'll be like, "Oh man, there's another guy over there from Scarborough. I can't go over there." But then his ears will go forward, and he'll be like, "Hey, but I have to. And you just keep taking steps. The name of this plant as well, I'm gonna totally butcher it because I'm not Lakota, or like Dakota language, they call it Heake Tapejuta. I probably messed that right up. I'm sorry if anybody is from there. But what that means is elk medicine too. So in all of the languages that exist in the territory of the elk, are understanding that elk is the dominant creature inside of a meadow, and that this is his favorite food, and to remember that you could take advantage of that relationship with this creature in that food by burning it at that particular time, and they'll come really close to you. So then you could shoot it with your camera and get the best pictures of an elk. I really like that. So for all of our aspiring photographers, or freezer fillers, I guess, as well. But anyway, what's another one? Should I just keep busting these out? I got a whole bunch here.
Sure, you've got time.
Yeah, check this one out. So here we got so you always think, like, whenever you're looking at a plant, look at it and, like, I don't know. One of my favorite things is to measure, to try and measure the possible impact that this plant can have on ecosystems, on human health, on environment, different other animals and things like that. But like try to measure impact and try to incorporate a value into this plant. That's something that like we have that we're not taught from a very young age, that plants have value. And so we could end up being incredibly destructive to them. But if we are taught from a young age, or as soon as possible, now hopefully, to try and understand a plant as valuable, but understand what each of those values are, and give it value by learning more about it, then that puts you in a position where you are going to be sort of coerced or forced into protecting it and being there for it. Like, hey, this is my friend. He's valuable. You can't bother him like this. You know what he's done for me? You know what he's done for my property? Yeah. So let me explain the value of this is Canada anemone. Anemone canadensis is the Latin name. And most people will call it Huissigibagons. One of the cool things about the name of this plant that I would like to tell you about is other names that it has. Most people will call it Huissigibagons. Huissigibagons. Or Huissigidabadon. Hey, I didn't even write that on the notes. Huissigidabadon, which is super cute. That was my grandma. She'll say that over and over again. Huissigidabadon. That's like a sweet button, because this kind of looks like a little button. And so Huissigidabadon. Dabadon. Sweet button. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, the other names of it. My grandma would say, yeah, Huissigidabadon, but also sometimes I heard it being referred to as Mi Jibik or Psweweshe Jibik, which is very interesting because Psweweshe is an echo. Psweweshe is an echo, like if you hear loons, and then it's echoing like in a harbor or something. Psweweshe is how we would describe that. So Psweweshe Jibik is a root, and so this is like echo root. So Mideo Jibik would share the same sort of meaning. But that's a very interesting, and my grandma always she always wanted to know why. Why would you call this echo root? What would this possibly have to do? And for this, I still do not have the answer. But sorry to be so anticlimactic. But one of the things that I wanted to share about this plant and about learning what you need to be able to put a value on a plant, or to look at a plant as being valuable, and then to be sort of force yourself into it, having to engage in a relationship with this plant once something has value, and that maybe you have benefited from. This is a really good teacher to be able to show how amazing plants can be. So there's this very notorious invasive species. I do not have a picture, but it's called dog strangling vine, DSV. Toronto's just covered with it, and it completely dominates the areas that it grows in. It's one of the most aggressive invasive species, and one of the most concerning. Hey, there's a little lady slipper in that picture. Very cool. So it's very aggressive, and it just takes over. Once it's there, it's there. Your whole garden's gone. Any sort of wild medicine that you planted is going to be gone, or patches of medicine that your family has been tending to for 800 years is going to be gone. We run into all kinds of crazy stories, all kinds of hatred to DSV, especially people who are trying to control it, because it's just so aggressive and it spreads itself by wind. And so like a milkweed, and so it can land anywhere. Wherever it lands, it's just going to take right over. It's really crazy. Anyway, anemone, Canada anemone, Huissigibagons, whatever you want to call it. I like Huissigibagons. I like saying it too. Huissigibagons. The button is a button. The button. Button. I could say it all day. Anyway, at Canada anemone, Huissigibagons, was I saying? That buddy in Toronto, Actually, maybe you can help me there, Deb. I forget his name. I think it's David Anderson. I think he's like I think he's at York doing his PhD
Anderson.
education.
Doug Anderson.
Doug,
Yeah.
Doug. Oh, it's Doug. Oh, I missed that guy. He's a genius. We were doing this little project on the Humber and restoring the Humber. You know, invasive removal. He was working with like an at-risk community, bringing them out and getting them on the land. It's super cool. So I was a consultant for that project. Forget what it was called, but. Uh, he just noticed he's just so in tune with invasives and removal. And at the time, you know, I wasn't so down. I was just coming out of Wiki, just this pristine place. And so I wasn't too familiar with invasives and things like that. But he was showing me dog strangling vine. And then he noticed, it was like early in the spring, and he's looking in this big patch of dog strangling vine, and we saw the anemone, and he was like, what is that? I knew it was it's anemone. And he said, how come dog strangling vine is not taking this plant over? And then he was just thinking off the cuff just while we were walking past, and he was like, I bet that can help control this species. And then he was experimenting with this for a little bit and realized that it was quite successful. And so a little bit more research, I was able to identify, you see these roots, what happens, the way that this plant works is all these little hairs. So dog strangling vine is like this, it stays sort of short, and for a certain amount of time, actually like right about exactly now is when dog strangling vine says, okay, everybody now, and then they all sprout up as fast as they can. And that sprout requires so much energy. And at that exact moment when all of the other plants require that big burst or when the DSV requires that big burst of energy, is when anemone has all these little roots, these little hair-like roots. And at the exact moment that DSV needs that big blast of energy, that's when Segna is going to take all of it and just suck the soil dry, because that's when anemone needs to push out its flowers, and that's when this guy needs its energy, and it does it just before DSV. And so so DSV ends up being not successful, and the Canada anemone is able to take over. So if we go to the picture, you know, you get a nice look at the seeds here. There's a couple different types of anemone. This is the one that is the most successful at choking out dog strangling vine, which is pretty ironic. But it makes tons of seeds. So you look at how many seeds are just on the one plant, and then you look at, like, you get to a spot like this. Think of how many seeds that you could get from here, and you start inoculating Toronto with an indigenous species, being able to control an invasive or choke out an invasive using an indigenous species. That's where it's at, man. You get a lot of people trying to control invasives using other invasives like purple loosestrife and the weevils, or those like ladybug things, those beetles coming here to eat all the loosestrife. So we got purple loosestrife coming here. I don't know, probably European plant. And then we got these beetles from Japan or whatever to come here and eat all the loosestrife, which they did. But when they ran out of loosestrife, they were like, hey, now there's no more food for us here. And they flocked to their next favorite food, which was grapes. And all the vineyards got wrecked for a couple of years. I forget when exactly that was, but a lot of them were put under. A lot of them still suffering from that economic loss. But this is an opportunity where we can fight in an invasive species with an indigenous species, and this is where there should be expected to have a lot more success. I'll show you another one. How come I can't get past here? Oh, there's me. Oh yeah, this one's real cool, real quick. This is Panax cinquifolia Canada ginseng. Extremely rare plant now. Used to be all over the place. Used to be really plentiful, really abundant. But of course, the value of ginseng is I think still more than gold. Anyways, it's ridiculous. There's a whole mafia in Ontario growing ginseng. You can watch, there's TV shows about it. It's crazy. They have guard dogs and 10-foot fences and armed guards and in Ontario protecting their stock of ginseng because of how valuable it is. And Canada ginseng especially is the most valuable ginseng in the world. That's one really interesting thing when you look at plant medicine. Sure, every place in the world has plant medicine, but there's something really special that happens in the Great Lakes where there is a lack of some, I don't know how you would say, more dangerous components like plant protective mechanisms, like alkaloids that a plant will create. Mainly alkaloids are the most toxic to us out of all of the other, phytochemicals that are in plants. But yeah, you'll get this blockage, you'll get alkaloids. So then you can't get at the medicine. And what happens there, this is like every other country in the world, in Australia and in Asia, and with Ayurvedic medicine and with European plants, they have these toxic alkaloids that you cannot have, so that prevent you from being able to achieve therapeutic amounts of the medicine inside. And what happens in the Great Lakes is we do not have that barrier. All of our medicines are so available, so gentle, so safe. And so then but on top of that, we will also have, when you're looking at all of the phenolitics, all of the phytochemistry, all of the active constituents inside of the plant, and you take every species of ginseng, there's 33% more ginsenosides, the principal ingredient inside of ginseng responsible for those adaptogenic qualities. There's 30% more than in Asian ginseng, and Asian ginseng is going to have 30% more than the Panax from Russia. And so it's like in other parts of the world, you could sort of start at the weakest area where that has the least amount of ginseticides, the least amount of medicinal components, and get it a little bit better. You go to Asia, you go to India, you get better and better and better. But every time at the top is the Great Lakes and the species that exist in Canada. You'll look at that list of all the plants that have the most concentrations of active constituents, canadensis, and it's just absolutely incredible. So on top of being very safe and not having those components that inhibit the ability to access a therapeutic dose, you don't have that, but then you have even more of what's responsible for that therapy. And so medicine is our gift. This is something that we have contributed to the whole world. And that's very evident in ginseng, because considering how much the whole rest of the world pays for Canadian ginseng, the most expensive species that you can buy is Canadian ginseng. And so, one really neat thing, the way that this affected history, is we will always call it Nishnabes. Of course, we call it Nishnabes because it's got these roots. Actually, none of these roots look like it. They're too young, but they look like little dudes, little people. So ginseng, actually, in Chinese language, I don't know which one, Asian language, sorry, is ginseng means little man. And then in Russia, I forget what the Russian word for this plant means, little Russian man. And then you come to the Great Lakes, and that's what we'll call it, Nishnabes, little Nishnaba man. And that's so yeah, it's actually a really incredible plant, very worth a lot. And so what happens then is Nishnabes, people don't call it that anymore. People call it Shonya Jivik. Shonya is money. Jivik is root. This root will give you a lot of money. And so what we did, experts, this is our home. And so people will just show us the money. Bring me that plant and I'll give you this. And we're like, whoa, holy man, I could buy a whole new wagon. And we eventually picked this clean. And we were largely responsible for the extirpation of the species. Very hard to find in the wild. I've found like a handful. And all of those, I was squealing like a little girl when I saw them. It was absolutely incredible. Very, very rare plant. But yeah, cool beans. I don't know if I should just keep busting them out. I really like this. I can just keep going forever. Let me see here.
Well, maybe do one more plant, and then if you want to field some of the questions or
Okay.
comments, yeah.
Oh yeah, because I'm not even looking at the questions. I'm sorry I said I'll answer your questions, but I'll do one more. Okay, one more. Because this one I get to show you something real cool. So this is a plant that we call kandamo. Kandamo is it's the name of this is also indicating to you an important utility use that it has. And so kandamo, kandon is a word that we use to describe it's a hunting term, and it's when you see a whole bunch of tracks. My uncle told me, he's like, you see a whole bunch of tracks, and you're like, hey, lots of them are here. Let's just sit here and kandon, just sit and wait. They'll just come right to us. And so it's like a real simple way. And that's kandon. When you see a whole bunch of tracks and evidence of prey, and then you just sit and wait, it's just gonna come right to you. And so we call this kandamo because, like frogs, that's how they use this pad. They use it to kandon. They see in the swamp all the bugs just all over the place, and then what grows are these little platforms that they could just sit on, and all the food is just going to come right to them. But the cool thing about that is they're also in the sun. They're not in the water like as if they would be if they were stuck in. They're floating on top, and so they're able to stay warm. They're cold-blooded, and so they're able to stay warm on top of the lily pad, and then able to be very fast in their hunting. And so they use this plant to kando. So one reason why we call it kandamo. Also, I wanted to show you ducks. I just found out recently, the other day, that ducks use this. Check this out. Hopefully it'll play for you. You probably can't hear, but little ducks will use that because all their food on top of the lily pads. Look at these little wood ducks cruising around, checking. They were favoring. I was watching them for a little while. They weren't eating in the water. They were just eating on top of the lily pads, and so they would run on them real fast. So they look at this the same way. They're like, hey man, all that food's on top of these lily pads and I could run on them real fast. So they were up there just munching away as they were watching them real long. But yeah, kandamo. I want to show you these big ugly roots. You'll see these. It's real freaky. They look like great big pineapples. They'd be floating up around all your creeks and rivers now because muskrats and beavers like to eat them, and they will throw all of their discard pile. It will just float to the surface. Like they get bugs inside these roots, and so a muskrat will be eating, and he'll be like, "Oh, it's all buggy." And he'll throw it away, and then those will float to the top, and you'll see these on shore. They look like aliens, but we use these like medicine. This is muscle medicine. It's actually a really amazing intervention for diabetes because one of the things that diabetes does is it lowers glucose uptake, your muscle's ability to utilize sugar. The most effective way to lower blood glucose levels is skeletal muscle activation. And if your skeletal muscles do not know how to use sugar, so there's pathways responsible for that, like GLUT3 and 4 responsible for skeletal muscle glucose uptake, and diabetes shuts those pathways off. And so diabetics can no longer utilize the most effective way to lower blood sugar. And so that makes the whole disease even worse. And so it's a little bit of a hole in the bucket, and you can just sort of plug that up with some kandamo. You make tea with these roots, and it helps to reset that. In a lot of the studies that they did on humans using these roots, they took diabetics, people who were inactive, and various pretty solid cross section. They only had like 80 people or whatever, but they had at the end of the round of tea, they had the glucose uptake that was equivalent to that of a professional athlete, to somebody who is dedicated to physical exercise. Now their muscles are just sucking up all of the sugar that they can, and which makes diabetes very easy to control, which makes our metabolic disease in general, our obesity epidemic very much more easy to control when we're able to just give our muscles the ability to utilize sugar. We're giving our muscles the ability to give us that control back, and so this is a very good intervention for diabetes because of that. But other things, muscle reparation as well. So like accessing different ways, different muscle growth pathways, like mTOR is sensitized in certain tissues, which is really, really incredible. And then, okay, I don't want to get real complicated, but the one really neat thing is that moose understand this as well. Moose know that this medicine is amazing for their muscles. So they dedicate like 8 hours a day in the morning and at night, totaling up to at least 8 hours a day, where they're just eating a ton of these roots, and that's getting their muscles ready to be able to for their mating season, to a week long, where they're just running, fighting, and mating all day, all night, not even eating, not sleeping. They're just doing their thing, making sure there's little moosies. And but they love this plant so much. One of the cool things about moose is that they have 2 mating seasons, 2 ruts. One is early, one is very late. The late one happens when the swamps are all frozen over. And so when the swamps are frozen over, moose loses access to this amazing medicine. And they'll be even smashing in the swamp to try to get access to it again, but it's frozen. And so they can't get it anymore. So they're all sad. They're like, hey, man, my favorite food, my favorite medicine is all gone. They're kicking the snow around. But that's because when you thought ahead, you understand frogs' relationship and ducks' relationship with this plant and moose's relationship with this plant. And you wait until they lose access to that. And then you could you could take advantage of their relationship with this plant. And with it, you burn a little bit of it wherever that smoke is going. That overrides their normal patterns of behavior, and they're gonna keep taking steps. Now they're not. I mean, like I always tell everybody that they're not gonna come give you a kiss, but if you're standing in a field in a big cloud of smoke, they're not gonna come up to you. they're not silly like that. But if you're hidden, if you understand moose are in the area, and you take this and you burn a little bit of it, and you kando, you sit and wait, you kando with kandamo, and then that moose is going to come right up to you. So you can take good pictures. But for the freezer fillers out there, one of the most important reasons why this knowledge is important is not because it makes you more successful of a hunter, but because it makes you more ethical of one. You're able to get a lot closer, to get a cleaner shot with this cloak of invisibility, like Harry Potter. Imagine how close you could get to moose with that jacket. Well, imagine no more. It can happen. Now I'm turning into an infomercial. We better look at some questions. Let me come back to you here. Uh-oh. How do I go back to Zoom? Uh-oh. Where am I? Oh, there it is. I got it at the top of the screen. Okay, stop sharing. Okay. Oh yeah, there's questions. So I'll get at your questions now. Let's see. Starting to roll in. Sharon with me here. Ron Rickard. Ron! Questionable ground up shit tagan. How much ground up chaga do you use for chaga? Tea, I guess, eh? How long do you steep it in an infuser for? I'll grind up my chaga. I use like a teaspoon for a pot, teaspoon for a little teapot. The most important thing though, just figuring it out what tastes good. Yeah, I'll use like a tablespoon, solid tablespoon of chaga powder for a gallon. That's perfect. That's pretty solid. Tastes real good. Oh, hey, here's some good questions. Oh, yeah. There you go, Josh. Good to see you on here. So Kandamo is variegated pond lily, which is Nufar variegata is the names. So variegated pond lily, Nufar variegata. I have issues with lily pads. I think with the fragrant lily pad, the Nymphea odorata is a well, it's even debated like in the whole ecological world as being an invasive. And so understanding and uncovering all of the names of all of these plants, it's really amazing. It's actually striking how we will look to a plant, and you'll be out in the bush with an elder or somebody who knows all their medicine, all their plants, and then you show them like fragrant water lily and they'll just say, I don't know what that is. But a plant's so dominant all over the place. How come you don't even know? How can you not know? But you know all these other aquatic species. Well, I think the reason why is because it is invasive. But we know Kandamo, we know Nufar variegata, we know variegated pond lily, and everyone knows the name of this from way down in the south, way the heck up north. So which one is native, which one is invasive? That's a big discussion in the community, in the ecological community, that I think we have the answer to. Because we know Nufar variegata, but we don't know Nymphea odorata. We don't know the fragrant water lily with the white flower. So that's a really amazing idea to understand too, a perspective to have, that this knowledge can also be a source to solve or to help with at least some of the issues in I don't know, traditional academia. There's a funny term for you. Can you eat the lily roots as well? Yeah, best in tea. Oh, Kelly, yeah, right on. You can eat the roots if you want. It's probably gonna taste pretty weird. Most people tell me anyways that it smells like horse manure. I have some here. Everybody says, oh, that stinks. It smells like horse manure. But I always like to tell everybody, yeah, it looks real freaky too. I always like to tell everybody that, it smells like horse manure, yeah, but really though, only the good aspects of horse manure, if that makes sense. But it looks real freaky when it's dried. Gets all wrinkly and yeah. Here's a solid question. Oh, sorry, yeah.
I was just going to say, the discarded lily roots that the muskrat and the beaver just kind of don't like the bugs in it and toss aside. Can you work with those? Or are they like, okay, if the beaver don't want it, then maybe we don't? Or can you actually kind of repurpose it or use it for the medicine?
Yeah, that's a pretty solid question too. And you can use what's discarded. I mean, you can see like the muskrat is so picky, mainly muskrat. Beaver only eat them like very seldom, but they discard pretty good pieces. It's not all garbage, or it's not like they only toss away the real bad parts. It's like if there's a little piece of rotten on the potato, they'll just throw away the whole potato. That's how they behave. And so there's good parts you could get off there if you're like salvage. There's salvageable pieces, but yeah, you can. So you just have to be a little bit more careful. There's more susceptible to rotting, and so you have to be a little bit more careful in the drying process. It literally takes 2 months to dry. I pick it in like the end of August, and it's not even ready until the end of October anyways, to be able to burn. All of mine from last year too, because I was bringing it outside, giving it sunshine in my real hot driveway. Then I'd bring it inside, and then I forgot it out there once. And then I was trying to fall asleep. It's like 1 o'clock. I'm stirring Iscom Dick all night, me and my dad. And then I could hear cats fighting. Rah, rah, rah. And then, but I just went to bed. And then as I was falling asleep, I could smell the air conditioning in the vent. Just smells like skunk. And then a skunk sprayed right on all my medicine out there. I was real mad. So it smells like horse manure and skunks. So it's even worse now. But yeah, you got to be a little bit more careful if you're salvaging from a discard pile, that it may be more susceptible to rotting. So yeah, Helene says, what are ways of harvesting them in a sustainable way? Are you worried about over-harvesting, over-exploitation of some of these wonderful plants as people might be learning more about them, like ginseng? Yeah, of course, that this is always the issue. And so the way that I like to approach this idea, the only way that I can, the best way that I can, is that you are going to be, is to begin a relationship with this plant the same way you'd begin a relationship with any other person, learning what their name is first. And then, just like when you're, my wife made me swear to never give this bad example that I'll try to work around now. But you start a relationship with the plant the same way that you start a relationship with a person. You meet somebody, you ask them what their name is, hello. The most successful pickup line, everyone says, you just say hello. And then what's your name? And then usually, well, I like to always say that every relationship begins selfishly. You'll see somebody and you'll be looking at them and you'll want to know how they could satisfy a need that you have. And so you'll ask them, hey, where did you go to school? Oh yeah, what'd you study? What are you an expert in? And if you need this person in your life, you will tell them, well, where I went to school, these are all the things that I'm an expert in. And if you guys both need each other, you will engage in a relationship. And so even our human to human relationships begin from a selfish place. And so it's okay too for plants. Then you learn what a plant is and you'll be like, hey, what's your name? Oh, Kandamo, Nufar Variegata, variegated pond lily. Nice to meet you. What are you good at? And learn the gift that this plant has to give you, to be, okay, this is muscle medicine. This is going to activate GLUT3 and 4 pathway, and AKT pathway, and mTOR to be able to repair muscle tissue and increase glucose uptake to help me overcome obesity or diabetes. And then you start engaging with it, and you're going to be like, and you're going to receive those benefits. But just like every other human relationship, you have a responsibility in that relationship. Learn what buddy went to school for, learn their expertise. And then if you just take and take and take from that person, they're just going to cut you right off. They're going to be like, you told me all these real good things about you, about where you went to school and about everything that you did, but you never gave me nothing. And you're just going to get cut off, and you'll just be all left without your, this is how human relationships go too. And so that's what the plant will do. If you just go in there and you're like, hey, I know you, I know what you can do, you're an amazing gift, and then just take and take and take, eventually you're going to get cut off. There's going to be none left. So what you have to do is understand, just like every other relationship, is that you have gifts and you have something that you could give back to the plant to be able to help it too. And so we're the only creature in the world that's able to sort of look at a plant and learn how to propagate it, learn how to help it, learn the cycle of how it grows and dies and reproduces, and expedite that any way and every way that we can. Usually the way that it looks like is birds are the biggest predator for seeds. For a plant's ability to reproduce, birds are the biggest destroyer of that. They eat seeds and digest them and destroy them. So do squirrels and chipmunks and mice. They are all the worst enemies of plants. And so we're the only creature that could sort of look back at that ecosystem and say, hey, Yeah, that's what's happening here. Well, if I want to help Kandamo, if I want to help if I want to help all of these amazing medicines that are helping me, if I want to reciprocate and help them, I have to mitigate into their reproductive process to remove these harmful predators and grab the seeds before they do and plant them. Or grab the seeds and distribute them in a different area, and so we can intervene into that process. And so it's actually really amazing, the process that plants rely on. I don't think I could go into that much detail in the amount of time that I have now, but really quickly, if you want to look more into this, most indigenous species of plants from the Great Lakes rely on a reproductive process that involves ants. And so myrimacochry is a process where an ant, the seeds will have a crust, an eleasome that's nutritionally complete for an ant, so it's their favorite food, but also that crust prevents the seed from being able to germinate. So ants will take that seed and they'll eat that eleasome, and then the seed they don't need to have anything to do with, and so they'll just throw it in a midden. It's called a midden. It's just a cavern full of discarded seeds because they ate all of the food, and they don't want to have to throw it out the top of their nest. So they throw it in a cave, and then what happens after that is who brings all of those seeds out is he'll come there. A bear will come there, and he'll want to eat all of that ant larvae. But guess what ants do? They have their midden full of seeds right beside the cavern full of their larvae. So the bear will come there and grab all the larvae, subsequently all of the seeds, and eat them all. And then the bear will be cruising around, and then he will distribute all of those medicinal seeds that the ant collected and ate. He'll, drop a bomb somewhere along the trail, and that's full of all of those medicinal seeds, because lucky for us, a bear has an incredibly short and really crappy digestive tract. And so the medicine seeds go through the bear and unharmed. It's a very gentle digestive tract. And so the bear will drop all those seeds. Then what happened after that is mice understand that bear's digestive system sucks. And so he's like, hey, look at that bomb that bear dropped over there. There's so much food left in that. This guy just throws that away. And so the mouse is going to go over there, grab all those little seeds, and then he's going to plant them in his trail system underneath the leaf litter and underneath the snow. He's going to plant those seeds a centimeter and a half deep throughout the forest floor. And that's going to be his food. And if the mouse is left alone, he's going to eat all of that food and digest it and destroy it. But lucky for us, we have gokoko, wainchugano, gakapshin. We have all of these medwe, all of these predators that absolutely love to eat mice. And so owls will remove the mouse. And I'm pretty sure that a family of barred owls, my buddy there, FES buddy, Andres, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that one family of barred owl can eat close to 30,000 mice a year. And so they're removing all of these mice. And so all of that medicine, all that food that those mice have planted to eat, they don't eat it anymore. And what happens is that it gets planted and it turns into medicine. And so, and then also rattlesnakes, is going to remove the mouse and to help with that planting. And so that's the system that we rely on. And what we need to understand is we have a unique ability, unique relative to every other creature in the world, to be able to understand that system and intervene into different parts, into ants, into bears, into owls. This is why, one of the most amazing aspects of sustainability that you could possibly engage with is leaving owls alone. And so this even exists now. Like Nishnaba won't even have pictures of owls in their home because it's like, hey, no, you should not look. Oh, come on. What happens if you just look at an owl? And then it's like, everyone's going to die. And then it's like, well, where is this coming from? But it's coming from a really incredible, real, pragmatic place of, if you bother an owl, you're destroying that owl's potential at removing the mouse and having all that medicine get planted. And so without that owl, we're going to lose all of our medicine and everybody's going to die. Don't look. And so then we don't even have them in our home. And so, or pictures of them in our home. That's how aggressively we will adhere to that idea. It's absolutely incredible. And so there's so many different ways that you can engage in sustainability. But the place that I like to make sure everybody is coming from is understand that you have the tool that you need to be able to engage in a reciprocal relationship with every plant. You understand what its name is, you understand the gift that it has to give you, learn what you could give back to it, and engage with that. And that's a place where everybody is going to benefit. I really like that question.
I think you have time for maybe one more. Maybe you can talk about your website. It sounds like someone wants to know where they can learn a little bit more.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So my Facebook page is called Creators Garden. Our business is called Creators Garden. And we are on and so you could go there. That's usually where I keep everybody in the loop as to where I'm going, what I'm doing. And we have our Patreon. We started an exclusive Patreon podcast where I share some of these ideas. We're just starting to fill it up now, just starting to fill up our YouTube page now. And also, one of my favorite things that we do is we have a Twitch channel. And we stream every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday on Twitch. And that's a really, really fun community. We've been going out and doing, not going out and doing, but we've been covering all these really amazing different things that we should be doing. And so engaging with that community, we're going to get, you get so much out of it. Like a lot of us have done this, making bark baths, helping with everything from age spots to autoimmune diseases to all these really crazy things. This bark bath is absolutely incredible. It's one of the programs that we did on Twitch over the last couple of weeks. But yeah, other than that, we do we're just getting set up now to be able to deliver online programming to different communities. But yeah, mainly my Facebook page, if you want to keep in touch, if you want to see what's going on, how you can support us or engage with this type of knowledge.
We've got a couple more minutes. And if you look on the screen, you'll see Joseph's very important whiteboard there, where he explains complex ideas as part of his online learning. I love how creative you are with that. Yeah. So with that, I want to thank Joseph. That was amazing. I like how you keep it real. I like how you keep it real. Like that's the one way to explain figuring out how to live this kind of virtual world and still be, still an engaging person with a great sense of humor. And I think that last 10 minutes was sort of like, if I was going to do a follow-up or summary, which I feel like compelled I should somehow do because I'm somehow hosting, it's just like that really important relationship with plants. And that has to be a reciprocal relationship. Like there's an obligation on the part of people to bother to learn. And I think the work that you're doing helps people do that. But before we go, just a reminder that next Tuesday is we're having John Johnson on Tuesday. You can join us, and then also Sylvia Plain also on the Thursday. So hopefully you can join us for those. Sylvia. So glad Joe was our inaugural person. Happy that he made himself available. And at some point we'll have Alan Corbier. So if you were listening, then you know how to get a hold of the other activities that we have going with the IG website. Every day there's something being posted on under the banner of Indigenous history. But hey, let's just learn something, really, important about Indigenous peoples Indigenous peoples in Canada. So you can join the listserv. But I did want to mention like people who actually made this happen, because the fact of the matter is people have to manage up in terms of me, because I'm pretty useless at technology. And so that's JC Chibla, Dali Carmichael, William Dandy, Jesse Abel, Ben, Ethan, Amelia, and David, all kind of making this happen. Probably the person who made it happen the most is Joseph, and I don't know if we could collectively, I don't know how this works, doing claps on, I think somehow, but close. Oh, go ahead. Do you have it? Oh, he's got it.
I learned that in my daughter's school.
Oh, well, yeah, well, you know what? That's where we have to learn stuff, right? The kids all know. Yeah. It's just like high five. There's my great big hand.
Yeah.
Like, so with that, unless you had a final word, Joseph, I think we're done. And I just really enjoyed that. I was just smiling and nodding the whole time. And as far as I can see from the comments, well, so Chimigwet for that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm always grateful for opportunities to be able to share. That's what I love. Yeah, so thank you for this.
Yeah, it was good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you too.
Yeah. So take it away, Dali. I'm not sure what's supposed to happen now. I'll just keep smiling.
All right, you guys, I just ended the live stream.